Hello learners, I am Dr. Ankita Devnath from IITTM Noida. We are here to learn about the Heritage Hotels of India. In this video, we will learn about the Heritage Hotels and the objective are to acquaint you with another novel tourism product, that is the Heritage Hotels, to familiarize you with the history of Heritage Hotel Scheme of India, give you details of the Heritage Hotel Scheme and make an appraisal of this performance of this scheme over the last few years. So let us start. In this video, we will undertake a detailed study of the Heritage Hotels which have been the foremost and commercially quite successful tourism product of India. It is to the credit of the architects of this scheme that they have succeeded in twin objectives of running an attractive project for promoting tourism and at the same time successfully and meaningfully preserve some of India's most valuable monumental heritage. The two achievements of this project have been largely complementary to each other. In the video further, we will gain insights into the scheme and also attempt to know the classification of heritage and legacy vintage hotels. So first, let us start with understanding what is a heritage hotel. Heritage hotels are hotels running in palaces, castles, forts, havelis, hunting lodges, residences of any size built prior to 1950. Heritage hotels are those properties which were originally the forts, mansions and palaces of the erstwhile royal families or the nobles of the royal court. They were built by these people in the form of their residences. These houses have been a center of royal household from centuries and have witnessed royal living. The magnificent homes of those bygone eras were honor of these royal families. The homes were filled with many untold luxuries and were made in exquisite architectural style native to the property. For a hotel to be considered a heritage hotel, the facade, architectural features and journal construction should have the distinct qualities and ambience in keeping with the traditional way of life of the area the property is built in. The heritage hotels today have preserved the legacy of the olden days. In India, after independence and formation of a democratic republic, it became difficult for the royal families to maintain such huge properties. For a long time, several such properties were left unattended and were prone to destruction and decay. After the realization of their importance, the concept of heritage hotels came up. Creative entrepreneurs and homeowners thought upon an idea of restoring, conserving and reusing these heritage residences of the country. Today, while some of the hotels are handled by the royal family themselves, others have been given to major hotel chains on lease who have now become the present-day caretakers. Let us now look at the history of heritage hotels in India. The concept of heritage hotels is not new to the world, particularly in Europe, where the French chain of Relais and Chateau, the British chain of small luxury hotels, the Spanish Paradoras, and several others linked some very historic and exquisite properties into hotel chains. Heritage hotels are mainly part of niche tourism. These are usually visited by couples, families and small group of friends rather than hordes of tourists in busloads because the buildings of heritage hotels were never intended for habitation or hospitality on a large scale. But in fact, these heritage hotels mostly cater to special interest tourists. At the time of India's independence in 1947, over 500 ruling princes combined their lands to join the erstwhile British territories and form the new democratic nation of India. Following the independence, however, things began to change. In 1950, the Jagidari system was abolished and the erstwhile rulers and nobles had to learn to earn their living. Then the Privy Purse were discontinued in 1970 and the titles of the rulers were abolished by law, making them common Indian citizens. What is a Privy Purse? A Privy Purse was a payment made to the royal families of erstwhile princely state as part of their agreements to first integrate with India in 1947 after the independence. Due to lack of funds, the host of forts, royal palaces within and outside the cities, shikar badis or hunting palaces, outhouses, water palaces, mountain retreats or beach houses began to be neglected and fall into despair. For most of the erstwhile rulers, this change was not easy to take, and it seemed a matter of pride to hold on to these properties rather than thinking of doing something constructive with them. When Maharaja Man Singh II of Jaipur first toyed with the idea of shifting out of the sprawling Rambagh Palace to a smaller one which used to be lived in by the British resident, he was sure to be met by a strong opposition even from within his family. On 8th December 1957, the Rambagh Palace Hotel was formally opened and the Maharaja of Jaipur became the first active princely hotelier in India, setting a trend which has continued down to the present day. Rambagh Palace was expanded in 1969 from 26 rooms to 80. The Taj Hotel Resorts and Palaces took over the management of the palace in 1972. Udaipur followed soon. From 1961 to 1969, the Jagnivas Palace, which was a former summer palace of the royal dynasty of Mewar, was transformed from a crumbling palace to the stunning Lake Palace. In 1971, India's oldest hoteliers, the Tatas, took over its management under the Taj Group of Hotels. The first restoration, construction and extension included only 20 rooms at the back, but later many more were added and the entire character of the Garden Palace was changed. Perhaps it can be reasoned that it is better to transform a ruin by changing its end use when no constructive use can be made of a crumbling ruin. For travelers, the Lake Palace now in Udaipur is an undeniable boon, providing an incomparable and voluptuous glimpse of the royal pleasures that was once the preserve of princes and princes. Similarly, Jahanuma Palace of Bhopal, which was built in 1890 and was the residence of Nawab Sultan Jahan Begum, was converted into a hotel in 1983 by Nadir and Yawar Rashid. In year 2000, the palace was classified as a Heritage Grand Hotel, the first of its kind in central India. The concept of heritage is being applied in other ways also. For example, a hotelier got the traditional wooden houses of Kerala dismantled from different places. They were put up near the backwaters in an area, and a new resort, Coconut Lagoon, came into existence. In Goa also, some of the traditional villas that house the Portuguese officials or landlords are now being converted into successful hotels. Now, these heritage hotels are not only a part of accommodation, they themselves have become a complete tourism product. In today's time, tourism has become more experiential. The tourist now not only goes for sightseeing or monument visit, but want their whole tour to be filled with experiences of the destination. So, they also want their accommodation to be an experience. Here, the heritage hotels play a very important role by providing heritage and tradition-soaked accommodation experience to the tourist. In many destinations in India, heritage hotels have themselves become tourism attraction where the tourists are visiting these destinations just to see or stay in these heritage properties. One of the best examples is Nimrana Fort Palace, which is an excursion from Delhi, where tourists just visit this fort palace as a tourism attraction and they stay or take an excursion to this palace. Taj Mahal Palace in Mumbai is an iconic tourism attraction of Mumbai, included as a sightseeing spot in many itineraries. Many tourists like to stay in these heritage properties to experience the tradition and cuisine native to the destination. Many of these heritage properties are located in remote places, but they still get tourists. Why? Because these are all inclusive properties providing a complete experience within the property. So, we can say heritage hotels are not only a part of the accommodation sector but have become a tourism product in themselves. Now, let us take a look at the Heritage Hotel Scheme of Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. We have noted above with an associated sense of nostalgia how palaces, havelis, castles and forts have become one of the major tourist interests of India. These were the hereditary properties of ruling princes or chieftains at some point of time. Some of these palaces have been converted into hotels by the owners in collaboration with established hotel groups. However, a large number of properties still remain with the original owners and many of them are now in a state of decay and disuse. The properties which have been converted into heritage hotels have proved immensely popular with the tourists who are interested in seeing the country and find staying at these traditional residences more attractive than conventional hotels. This has also led to the preservation of these historic buildings. But as these properties were originally built as personal residences and not commercial hotels, these properties could not be classified or approved as hotels under the system adopted by the Ministry of Tourism for normal commercial hotels, which are related to the conventional hotels, and these properties, these heritage properties, do not fit the norm. These norms are the size of rooms, the toilet, carpeting and various other facilities. So, when the concept of heritage hotels started, it was quite clear that to follow the norms for conventional hotels on a heritage hotels would not be effective, and these traditional residences such as palaces, havelis, etc. do not fit these conventional norms. Also, in case the norms were imposed, they would take away from the ambience of these residences and would lead to traditional nature of these buildings being lost. It was therefore necessary to adopt the norms which would preserve the traditional nature of these historic buildings and the traditional lifestyle which are specially attractive to tourists. So accordingly, a new classification described as heritage hotels was adopted in January 1991 as an additional category. This was initially only in respect of hotels in Rajasthan, as heritage hotels were started in Rajasthan, and the norms were then finalized by Department of Tourism in consultation with state government and the Heritage Hotel Association of Rajasthan, which has membership of most of the properties run by the owners of these traditional residences in Rajasthan. Subsequently, the scheme has been expanded to all the states of the country. Besides the commercial aspect, another argument in favor of this scheme is that it helps in the conservation of our monuments, traditional buildings and heritage. As these heritage hotels result in conservation of hotels and promotion of tourism, the Ministry of Tourism in 2018 has come up with one more new category of hotels that are constructed, built with materials from heritage properties, buildings, erected prior to the year 1950, provided that at least 50% of the material used or construct the building is sourced from the heritage property or building. This new category is known as legacy vintage hotels. So now we have two categories in the heritage hotels. First is the heritage hotels and the second is the legacy vintage hotels. Let us now understand the various categories under two broad categories. We'll start with heritage hotels first. As discussed earlier, heritage hotels cover hotels in palaces, castles, forts, havelis, hunting lodges, residences of any size built prior to 1950. The facade, architectural features and general construction should have the distinct qualities and ambience in keeping with the traditional way of life of the area. The architecture of the property to be considered for this category should not normally be interfered with. After any expansion or renovation, the newly built up area added should not exceed to the 50% of the total built up area, including the old and new structure. For this purpose, facilities such as swimming pools, lawns, etc. are excluded. Under this heritage hotel classification, there are three subcategories. First one is heritage basic. This category covers hotel in residences, havelis, hunting lodges, castles, forts, palaces built prior to 1950. They should have a minimum of 5 rooms. The second category is heritage classic. This category covers hotels built prior to 1935 and they should have a minimum of 15 rooms. The third category is heritage grand. This category covers hotel that was built prior to 1935, similar as classic, but they should have a minimum of 15 rooms. All public and private areas, including rooms, should have superior appearance and decor. At least 50% of the rooms should be air conditioned, except in hill stations where there should be heating arrangements. Now let us take a look at the second classification, which is the legacy vintage hotels, which are hotels that are constructed, built with materials from heritage properties, buildings, that is, the properties or buildings which were built, constructed, erected prior to 1950. In these hotels, at least 50% of the material used to construct, build the hotel is sourced from heritage properties or buildings. The certifying authority for the extent of usage and age of materials used for construction is appropriate by a central, state or local government authority. These legacy vintage hotels will be subclassified into 3 categories again. The first category is legacy vintage basic. This category covers hotel built with materials sourced from heritage properties built prior to 1950. These hotels should have a minimum of 5 rooms. At least 50% of the rooms should be air conditioned, except in hill stations. The second category is legacy vintage classic. This category covers hotels built with materials sourced from heritage properties or buildings built prior to 1935. The hotel should have a minimum of 15 rooms, along with the general feature and ambience conforming to the overall concept of heritage and architecture. The rooms should be air conditioned. The third category is legacy vintage grand. This category covers hotel built with materials sourced from heritage properties, buildings or structures built prior to 1935. The hotel should have a minimum of 15 rooms. All public and private areas, including rooms, should have superior appearance and decor, and 100% of the rooms should be air conditioned, except in hill stations where heating arrangements are needed. So, the basic difference between heritage hotels and vintage hotels is that heritage hotels are hotels built or operated in the properties that are built prior to 1950, and the legacy vintage hotels are hotels that are constructed from the material that is stored or sourced from the buildings or structures that were built prior to 1950. Now there are certain classifications or norms which are common for both heritage hotels and legacy vintage hotels that we will discuss further. The first category is related to cuisine. In basic categories, along with keeping the architectural style, the hotel should offer traditional cuisines of the area. In classic categories of both heritage and legacy vintage, the hotel should offer traditional cuisine but should have 4 to 5 items which have closer approximation to continental cuisine. And in the grand category of both heritage and legacy vintage, the hotel should offer traditional and continental cuisine. Next classification or category is sporting facility. In basic hotels, there is no mandate for sporting facility of any kind. In classic category, hotel should have at least one, and in grand category, hotel should have at least 2 sporting facilities, which can be swimming pool, health club, lawn tennis, squash, riding, golf course, etc. Third requirement is of bar. In case of grand and classic, bar is necessary and desirable in the case of basic. Now there are certain features that are same for all heritage and legacy vintage category hotels. These are mandatory guidelines that hotels under these categories should follow to keep up with the service and standards they strive to offer. So the features that are common in all categories of hotel under the heritage and legacy vintage are: there should be adequate parking space for cars, all public rooms and areas and the guest room should be well maintained and well equipped with quality carpet, area rugs, good quality durries, furniture, fittings, etc. in good taste and keeping up with the traditional lifestyle of that particular area. The guest room should be clean, airy, pest-free, without dampness and musty odor, and of reasonably large size with attached bathrooms with modern facilities. There should be a well-appointed lobby or lounge equipped with furniture of high standard with separate ladies and gents cloakrooms with good fittings. There should be a reception, cash and information counter, money changing facilities and left luggage room. There should be a well-equipped, well-furnished and well-maintained dining room. The kitchen and pantry should be professionally designed to ensure efficiency of operation and should be well-equipped. Kitchen should follow all mandatory safety and hygiene protocols related to quick cooking, pest control, washing system, garbage disposal, refrigeration, drinking water, etc. The hotel should offer good quality cuisine and the food and beverage service should be of high standard, and the use of crockery, cutlery, glassware should be of high standard and in sufficient quantity, keeping in view the lifestyle and the number of guests to be served. There should be qualified, trained, experienced, efficient and courteous staff in service in clean uniform, and the staff coming in contact with the guest should understand English. Housekeeping at these hotels should be of the highest possible standard, and there should be a plentiful supply of linen, blankets, towels, etc., which should be of highest possible standard. Arrangements for heating, cooling must be provided for the guest rooms depending upon the season. Places which have telephone lines must have at least one phone in the office. All guest rooms should have intercom facility. Arrangements for medical assistant must be there in case of need. The staff to room ratio must be in keeping with the number of guest rooms in each property. These hotels must run on a professional basis while losing none of their ambience and services. The hotel should be environmental friendly. The garden and grounds should be well maintained. There should be an efficient system of disposal of garbage and treatment of waste and effluents. The hotel should present authentic and spatially choreographed local entertainment to guests. They should also have, wherever possible, arrangements for special services such as wildlife viewing, water sports, horse, camel or elephant riding or safaris, etc. Now, all these features are necessary to maintain the standard of service that is expected by an inbound or a domestic guest. And these features, if followed by the hotels, will ensure that their hotel is a successful tourism product. All heritage properties have to apply for classification or reclassification with Ministry of Tourism on voluntary basis. As of 2019, the application fees in heritage hotels category is 12,000 rupees and in legacy vintage category is 15,000 rupees. Apart from the above mentioned points, it is necessary that the architecture of the properties to be considered in category of heritage hotels or legacy vintage hotels should not be interfered with. Any extension, improvement, renovation or change in the existing structure should be in keeping with the traditional architectural style and construction technique, harmonizing the new with the old. These hotels must be run on a professional basis while losing none of these traditional features. This is necessary because the main attraction of these hotels is the traditional building or the architecture that they offer. These heritage and legacy vintage hotels must present a distinctive and traditional lifestyle of the area and should be of very high quality in terms of services, ambience and cuisine of not less than a 4-star standard of hotel. As these hotels result in preservation of historic buildings and also in preservation of heritage of a place, a lot of incentives are given by state and central government to the owners of these historic properties so that they convert their properties which are not in use to commercial projects such as heritage hotels. Heritage hotels are unique because they provide heritage experiences and accommodations simultaneously, and they involve a gentrification process that is an important part of heritage preservation and promotion in any given destination. They result in conservation and promotion of traditions and culture of our past. India is dotted with many historical houses, havelis, bungalows and palaces that are in deteriorating condition now. Why? Due to the lack of upkeep and maintenance. In order to promote more conservation of these historic buildings and heritage tourism in India, both state and central government provide certain incentives to owners or professional hotel management companies for operating heritage hotels. These incentives may range from financial assistance to no limit on capital investment, luxury and entertainment tax rebates, interest subsidy, tax holiday, energy subsidy, concession on stamp duty, etc. Financial institutions like TFCI, IFCI and IDBI also grant interest rebate on amount of foreign exchange earnings and help in investment in these projects. For heritage hotels, priority consideration is also given to approved projects in allotment of construction materials like cement, steel, or for telephone lines, LPG connections, etc. Efforts are made to ensure speedy process of getting no dues and approval for tourism related projects, and the implementation starts as quickly as possible. All this is done, all these incentives and speedy things are done to ensure that more homeowners are motivated to convert their properties into heritage hotels. All these incentives that motivate more owners to open and operate heritage hotels serve a dual purpose or conservation of heritage and increasing the unique accommodation capacity for tourists in the country, which in turn makes India a more attractive destination for inbound tourists. So now we have come to the end of the video and let us sum up. The development of heritage hotels in India has created immense interest and has great potential because these have become unique tourism product of India owing to their special heritage offering. Heritage hotels have also substantially increased the accommodation available for tourists within the country not only in major cities but also in remote locations. Heritage and legacy vintage hotels help to conserve and protect. Heritage and legacy vintage hotels help to conserve and protect the heritage of the country, which otherwise would be lost forever. Finally, it generates substantial economic activity and employment, particularly in lesser developed areas where many of these properties are located.